Hi, so just a quick video on media and social learning theory and how they relate to kind of crime. So remember, when we're talking about the media, generally the questions will be about how it influences antisocial behaviour, and that's kind of a definition of antisocial behaviour. So when we're looking at how the media affects it, or the role of media, we've got lots of evidence. So Rideout looked at the number of kind of acts of violence or aggression in TV. Williams found that increased media exposure increases antisocial behaviour. The big question is kind of why video games, movies, TV shows, etc. increase the risk of crime, especially video games. Bartholomew put it down to desensitization. Remember, if you see all of this violence in the media, you come to expect it. You don't get upset by it anymore, and you are desensitized. Funk also demonstrated this. However, there are problems with individual differences. Remember, it gives people a justification. The heroes on TV often are seen as kind of being justified in their violence. It is an allowable thing for them to do. We can also talk about glamorization. We can talk about glamorization. We can talk about the fact that the role models are rewarded and not punished for their crimes, so they don't get punished for what they do. Again, the example I keep using is Die Hard. At the end of the movie, he rides off into the sunset with his wife, despite having killed 12, 13 people, and the police never try to question him on it. So we never see the negative consequences of the violence, things like that. Then we can talk about real life cases, the James Bulger case, Columbine shootings, the Colorado movie theatre, and how the media was blamed for them. So movies like Chucky were blamed for James Bulger, and video games like Doom and music like Marilyn Manson was blamed for Columbine. Obviously Batman was blamed for the Colorado movie theatre shooting. However, remember, when we talk about this in the exam, these are limited and not significant. They are weaknesses, if anything, because there are too many extraneous variables. In the James Bulger case, those two kids had very difficult lives. In the Columbine case, both of those boys had kind of mental health issues. They'd been bullied a lot throughout their school lives. There are extraneous variables, so we can't just blame what happened on the fact that they watched violent media. Huseman and Aaron looked at the amount of TV that kids watched and found that it's linked with the amount of arrests in adulthood. It's a very good study for talking about TV violence. Anderson and Dale looked at video games. Remember, video games are especially linked to this whole media and crime thing because they get rewarded. So the people who are watching the who are playing the video games are rewarded by like points and things like that when they are violent. And what they found was people who were playing violent video games had an increase in their kind of aggressive thoughts and behaviours. Obviously, you can pause all this and make notes on Anderson and Dale at your leisure. So social learning theory, remember, is the big kind of explanation of this. It can be linked either to the media in exam questions, or it can just be by itself. The example was a 12-mark question that we looked at before, asking why Sam was more likely to be a criminal when our older brother was. So remember, 4 main rules of social learning theory. People copy. They make a choice about who they will copy, modelling based on identification. They're more likely to copy a higher status same-sex role model, and they're more likely to copy somebody if they see that model being rewarded, the vicarious reinforcement. Remember, so there are these 7 stages. Firstly, you have to pay attention, and I'll talk us through the example as it relates to kind of copying aggression from the media. So we pay attention to our role models, and the role model is whichever celebrity or person in the movies that we are copying of. Say it's Batman in the Batman movies. We see him as the role model. We retain the behaviour that they do because we identify with them. You can talk about these in a different order, but that's generally the idea. We pay attention to role models and retain their behaviour because we identify with them. This identification is also what makes them our role models. So we might identify with them because, again, they are glamorized. They're not punished. We think that they're cool. The classic one from Bandura is they are the same sex as us. And we will reproduce their behaviour if we are motivated to do so. So vicarious reinforcement. At the end of the movie, the guy who's violent gets the girl. In real life, the criminal has lots of kind of money and respect, so we want that as well. They are being rewarded, but that makes us want to copy them. It can also work if there's a lack of punishment. So somebody does something and we don't see them being punished for it. So again, remember 4 stages: attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. A role model is anybody that we can copy the behaviour from. We identify with people and want to be like them. So we observe and imitate this behaviour. There's some cognition involved in this, unlike the other learning theories. Remember, this can occur through vicarious reinforcement, vicarious punishment, and we can also see vicarious extinction happening. But generally we will just refer to all of this as vicarious reinforcement. And these can have the modelling effect, the eliciting effect, the disinhibiting effect, and the inhibitory effect. So the modelling effect, where we copy of something because we've seen a model do it. The eliciting effect, where we are likely to see an increase in behaviour. So remember, in Bandura's study, the kids made up their own aggressive acts. They didn't just copy exactly what the model did. The disinhibiting effect, we will copy of somebody if we don't see them being punished for it. And finally, the inhibitory effect, which is, remember how prison works. We see somebody being punished, so we don't do what they did. And that is kind of the end of it. Remember, there are various studies that support. We can talk about Bandura, Anderson and Dill, Rideout, Herzman and Erin. The big study that goes against it is Charlton, which I'll be making a separate video on. And then we've obviously talked about the other evaluation points, and we will look at them in a bit more detail during revision. Right, thanks very much.